I get asked this question all the time. Sarah, if you had to move within Gwinnett, where would you actually go? Or Sarah, if you were starting over, where would you choose? And honestly, I think it's a good question because I know a lot of people who picked their first house in this county and have been wondering ever since if they would have made a different call with what they know now. So today, I want to give you my real honest answer, not the real estate agent answer and not the marketing answer. I've actually lived in 4 different places in this area. Here's what I would do answer. I'm Sarah. I'm a real estate agent here in North Metro Atlanta. Full disclosure, I grew up in Cobb County. We ventured to Gwinnett County shortly after having our first child. And at this point, we have now moved 4 times in the same general 5-mile radius. Buford twice, Flowery Branch for a couple of years. Technically, that's Hall County. It's not Gwinnett. We'll get to that. And finally, where I am now, which is Hamilton Mill and Dacula. So when I tell you where I would go if I had to do it all over again, I'm telling you from my actual experience. Here's what we're getting into today. Why I would still choose Hamilton Mill, and the one thing that makes any big county feel like a small town. Plus 4 other areas I would seriously consider, depending on what your life looks like, and the parts of Gwinnett I personally wouldn't pick for my family, but I genuinely love and think are wonderful locations to land. Welcome back to my channel if you've been here before, and if you're new, hi, I'm Sarah. I do a deep dive on the suburbs around North Metro Atlanta every week, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's get into it. Let's start with the answer that probably won't surprise you if you've been around here for a while. If I had to do it over again, I would still end up in Hamilton Mill. But I want to explain why, because the why is actually way more useful than the where. When we moved here, I'll be honest, I didn't know where here was. I grew up in Cobb County, Kennesaw to be exact. People often ask me how the 2 counties compare, and truly they are very similar. Buford Drive, for example, feels a lot like Barrett Parkway felt at home. Same energy, same vibe, same traffic. But the first time I went to a grocery store and the sign said Flowery Branch, I genuinely had never heard of Flowery Branch in my life. I actually had no idea that we had moved to the northern tip of Gwinnett County when I first saw that sign. All of this felt like a foreign place. Now, all these years and 4 moves later, it feels like home. Here's what you'll need to know. Gwinnett is a big county, like it's really big, almost 1 million people. And yet where I live, it feels a little bit like a small town. Now we go to a big church out here, and there's a saying that I hear a lot, that you have to be in a small group to make a big church feel small. I think the same is true in big counties. Hamilton Mill, for my family, is that small group. It's how this huge, sprawling county shrinks down to something that feels personal. Here's what that actually looks like in my real life. My kids are 15, 12, and 10. They can ride their bikes to their friends' houses, and they can walk over to the gas station to buy themselves snacks because apparently I never have enough in the pantry. They can go to the neighborhood basketball court. They've got secret fishing spots. They build forts. I'm using that term generously. In the woods. My kids all play sports, so the school community and the sports community, they all kind of bleed together. We'll run into players and parents and coaches at the park and at the grocery store and at restaurants. The schools are very strong. We've been very happy here. This past year, I've actually had 1 child at every level, so elementary, middle, and high school. We bleed for Mill Creek, baby. And the community shows up for games, for events, and for each other. And that is the part most people miss when they're shopping for a house. They're looking at the fancy kitchen quartz and the square footage and the master bathroom. And listen, those things do matter. But really what makes a place feel like home is whether you can step outside and run into someone you know. So that is my case for Hamilton Mill. And honestly, for our family, it's hard to beat. If you had told me 20 years ago that I'd be saying that about Dacula, I would have laughed because I wouldn't have even known how to pronounce it here. But here we are. Now, here's the honest part. If my life looked different, if I didn't have 3 kids very plugged in here, or we were in a different phase of life, I'd be looking at a few other places in Gwinnett too. Let me walk through them. If I were doing this in my 30s without kids or maybe younger kids, and I wanted something a little more walkable and polished, Suwanee would be at the top of my list. Suwanee Town Center is one of the best little downtown areas in the county. Concerts, restaurants, farmers markets, the whole deal. The North Gwinnett School Cluster is one of the strongest in the state, and it's central enough that you're not making a 45-minute drive every time you want anything. The trade-off, though, is you're paying for it. Suwanee tends to be more expensive per square foot than other parts of the county, and it's a little bit more curated, which is a feature or a bug depending on what you want. Sugar Hill is one that's a little bit more under the radar, but it would be high on my list. It has that same established community with personality feel like Hamilton Mill, but it tilts a little further west and it has its own thing going on. The Bowl at Sugar Hill is one of my favorite event venues in the whole metro. They have outdoor concerts and food trucks and movies on the lawn. It's a very cool community asset. You also get some really beautiful neighborhoods here, and the prices tend to be a little friendlier than what you would see maybe in Suwanee right now. The trade-off for Sugar Hill is that the schools can be split across a few different districts depending on where you land. So if that's important to you, you really need to know what address falls into what district before you commit. That part can trip up a lot of buyers if you're paying attention to schools. Now, Hoschton is interesting because if you look at a map, most of Hoschton is technically in Jackson County. A small piece reaches into Gwinnett, and then an even smaller piece is in Barrow County. So if somebody tells me they live in Hoschton, my first question is always like, but where in Hoschton? The parts that are Gwinnett, or even the parts that are technically Jackson, but feel completely connected to the north part of Gwinnett, would absolutely be on my radar. What I love about the Hoschton area in general is that it's growing, but it's not that blink and it changes growth that you see in some pockets. The downtown is starting to take shape. The communities here are places like Antrim Glen and Reunion Country Club, Twin Lakes. They feel established and personal. So if Hamilton Mill is feeling like this small town inside of a big county, Hoschton feels like a small town because it actually is one. The trade-off is you need to know where you are inside of the city because Hoschton spans a few counties, and that matters for school district and resale value. The City of Buford is the one I think is most understood. They have their own school system, so even though Buford as a zip code spans Gwinnett and Hall counties, if you live inside the actual city limits of Buford, your kids can go to Buford City Schools, which are excellent and very competitive. Downtown Buford has its own personality with Tannery Row, the restaurant and event scene, the walkable historic downtown. If I were a different version of me, maybe with one kid, maybe more career focused, maybe wanting that walkable small town with character feel, downtown Buford would be where I'd go. Trade-off though, inventory inside the actual city limits is tight and prices reflect that demand. You have to know which side of the line you're on because Buford, the zip code, and Buford City Schools aren't always the same thing. So that's a conversation you'll really want to have with someone who knows the lines before you sign anything. Okay, here's where I want to be really honest. I am a North Gwinnett person. Everything I just walked through is up here. So it's Hamilton Mill, Suwanee, Sugar Hill, Hoschton, the City of Buford. That's the top third of the county. But there are parts of Gwinnett I would not pick for my family, but I genuinely love, and I want to give them a chance here because if I just glossed past them, I would be doing you a disservice. Specifically, I'm talking about historic Norcross and Duluth. Both of those are about 2 exits off of Interstate 285. So if you're commuting into Atlanta or working in the tech corridor, or you just want easier access into the city with everything it has to offer, you're already winning down there on geography alone. But here's what I really love about them, and I'll admit this is partly my foodie talking. These are real melting pots. The cultural diversity in this part of the county is on a whole nother level. The restaurants in Duluth especially, you've got authentic Korean, Vietnamese, Indian, Mexican, all of it. Buford Highway runs right through this part of the county, and that's one of the best food corridors in the entire state. People drive in from all over Atlanta for just that. Historic Norcross has its own thing going on too. The walkable downtown, the old train depot, the little shops, the restaurant, the brewery scene. It's a small town charm with a really diverse and kind of artsy vibe layered on top. There's festivals and farmers markets and live music. There's a real personality there that you can't just manufacture overnight. And it's there because the community has been there for a really long time. The schools down there are more diverse too, which, depending on what you want for your kids, is a genuine benefit. Different cultures, different perspectives, and different conversations at the lunch table, and different food in the cafeteria. Some families specifically choose this part of the county for just that. So Duluth and historic Norcross, I love it down there. If you're looking for that combination of culture, food, easy access to Atlanta, and a more diverse community, that's where I would send you, no hesitation. To recap, if I had to start over in Gwinnett tomorrow, I would still end up in Hamilton Mill, because the schools are strong, the community is real, and it's how I make a big county feel like a small town. But if my life looked different, I would seriously be looking at Suwanee, Sugar Hill, the Hoschton area, or inside of the City of Buford. And if I wanted easier access to Atlanta, plus genuine cultural diversity, better food choices, and a more diverse community, historic Norcross or Duluth without question. The right Gwinnett neighborhood isn't the one with the prettiest kitchen. It's the one that fits the life you're actually living. If you're working through this right now, if you're staying in Gwinnett but thinking about a different area, or trying to figure out if your current spot still fits, I'd love to help you think through it. The link to my calendar is in the description below, so grab some time. Even a 15-minute call can save you a lot of second guessing. Until then, make sure to like this video, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment with where you would pick in Gwinnett if you were starting over. I genuinely want to know. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.